Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We are in Fairfax, Virginia, and just in front of the NRA headquarters. Today is August 4th, and Joaquin will be turning 18.
Happy birthday! 6 months after the Valentine's Day massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, we speak to the parents of one of the 17 victims, Joaquin Oliver. They just mark what would have been Joaquin's 18th birthday with a large protest outside NRA headquarters. We'll talk to Manny and Patricia Oliver about how they're using art to remember their son and fight gun violence.
We decided, me and Patricia, that Joaquin, besides being a victim, that he is, sadly but true, he will be an activist. And this is a way to do that. This is a way to bring the legend of Joaquin right here, right now, very loud and clear, as one of the kids that is leading this amazing movement.
Then, nearly 3 weeks after the court-imposed deadline for reuniting families forcibly separated at the U.S.-Mexico border, more than 550 children remain in government custody. We'll speak with award-winning reporter John Carlos Frey, just back from Guatemala and Mexico. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Pennsylvania, a grand jury report released Tuesday has revealed more than 300 Catholic priests sexually abused 1,000 children and possibly thousands more over 7 decades, and that the church leadership covered up the abuse. The report details how priests raped young girls and boys, including one priest who raped a young girl in the hospital after she had her tonsils out. Another priest impregnated a young girl, then arranged for her to have an abortion. The report also chronicles how the church used an array of tactics to conceal the abuse, including lying to the community about why a priest was removed from the parish, transferring pedophile priests rather than firing them, locking abuse complaints away in a secret archive. One priest who'd been repeatedly accused of child abuse asked for and received a letter of recommendation to work at Disneyland. This is the Pennsylvania Attorney General, Josh Shapiro.
The term secret archives is not my term. It is how the church officials themselves referred to the troves of documents sitting in filing cabinets just feet from the bishops' desks. In each diocese, the bishops had the key to the secret archives, which contained both allegations and admissions of the abuse and the cover-up.
The Vatican declined to comment on Tuesday. Primaries were held in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Connecticut, and Vermont on Tuesday, where Christine Hallquist made history by becoming the first openly transgender major party gubernatorial nominee in U.S. history. She easily won the Democratic primary, will now face Republican Vermont Governor Phil Scott in November. If she wins, she'll become the nation's first transgender governor. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders also easily won his Democratic Senate primary, though he's expected to run in November as an independent. In Minnesota, State Representative Ilhan Omar is now poised to become the first Somali-American woman elected to Congress and one of the first Muslim women elected to Congress after she won her Democratic primary on Tuesday. Her victory comes a week after another female Muslim candidate, Rashida Tlaib, won her congressional primary in Detroit. Also in Minnesota, outgoing Democratic Congressmember Keith Ellison won a sweeping victory in the Democratic primary for Attorney General. His victory comes only days after he was accused of physically and emotionally abusing his ex-girlfriend. He denies the charges. In Connecticut, former National Teacher of the Year Johanna Hayes handily won her Democratic primary and is poised to be Connecticut's first black woman in Congress. And in Kansas, which held its primary last week, Governor Jeff Collier has conceded to Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach in the too-close-to-call Republican primary for governor. Kobach is a key architect of the GOP's voter suppression efforts nationwide. He's fiercely anti-immigrant and led Trump's widely discredited Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. President Trump has publicly attacked former White House aide Omarosa Manigault-Newman. In a racist and sexist tweet, Trump wrote, "When you give a crazed, crying lowlife a break and give her a job at the White House, I guess it just didn't work out. Good work by General Kelly for quickly firing that dog." Up until her firing, Omarosa was the only African-American to serve in a senior role at the White House. In her new book, she describes the president as racist and claims he's used the N-word repeatedly. President Trump has denied using the N-word, but CBS News has published an audio recording that appears to show White House aides discussing the potential fallout from the release of audio of Trump using the racial slur. This is a clip of the audio in which Trump spokesperson Katrina Pearson is speaking. Listen carefully.
I'm trying to find out at least what context it was used in to help us maybe try to figure out a way to spin it. Yeah, he said it. No, he said it. He's embarrassed.
Omarosa released that tape. On Tuesday, White House spokesperson Sarah Huckabee Sanders said she could not guarantee there isn't an audio recording of Trump using the N-word. This is Sanders being questioned by NBC News' Kristen Welker.
Can you stand at the podium and guarantee the American people they'll never hear Donald Trump utter the N-word on a recording in any context?
I can't guarantee anything, but I can tell you that the president addressed this question directly. I can tell you that I've never heard it.
In Italy, at least 39 people were killed when a bridge collapsed in Genoa on Tuesday, sending dozens of vehicles tumbling 150 feet. The cause of the collapse is not yet known, but many residents are calling on the head of the company that operated the bridge to resign. The Morandi Bridge was the fifth bridge to collapse in Italy in 5 years. In Yemen, the health ministry says U.S.-backed Saudi-led airstrikes in Hodeidah province have killed 13 civilians and injured 24 more. The reported strikes come as outrage continues to grow over the U.S.-backed Saudi-led bombing of a children's school bus in Yemen's northern city of Sada, which killed 51 people, including 40 school children. This is UNICEF's Maritzel Milano.
UNICEF has been responding with medical materials and with support to the injured children. But the important thing is that these attacks don't repeat again. We don't need to come back again and treat the children. The objective is that children are not attacked, they are not killed, they are not injured. This is the most important. We need to put a stop to this war.
In Gaza, health officials say doctors have been forced to halt chemotherapy treatment for cancer patients because of severe medication shortages. The officials say the shortages have been exacerbated by Israel's decision in July to seal a key border crossing, a move Human Rights Watch has denounced as collective punishment. Also in Gaza, Israeli airstrikes destroyed a cultural center in Gaza City last week. A photo in the aftermath of the bombing shows Palestinians holding the cultural center sign surrounded by the building's rubble. And former CNN host Reza Aslan has spoken out about being detained by Israeli authorities while he was crossing into Israel from Jordan 2 weeks ago. Aslan said the Israeli authorities asked him to write down the names of Palestinians and journalists he knew and threatened him, saying, quote, "If you don't cooperate, it will be a long time before you see your kids again." Reza Aslan spoke out after Jewish-American journalist Peter Beinart also went public about his recent detention and questioning by Israeli authorities at Ben Gurion International Airport. In Tunisia, thousands of people rallied in Tunis Monday to demand equal inheritance rights for women. The Tunisian president, Baji Caid Essebsi, has proposed changing the law to allow equal inheritance. Current Tunisian law typically allows men to inherit twice as much as women. And in Nebraska, authorities executed Carrie Dean Moore using a 4-drug cocktail that included fentanyl, which had never been used before in an execution in the United States. It was the first execution in Nebraska in more than 20 years. Journalists who witnessed the execution said Moore's face turned red and then purple, and that the execution took over 20 minutes from the moment the first drug was administered. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, returned to class today amidst heavy security after summer break. It was 6 months ago Tuesday when a former student armed with a semi-automatic AR-15 gunned down 17 students, staff, and teachers in just 3 minutes. It is one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. After the horrific attack, many of the students who survived the shooting became leading activists for gun control. In March, they led the historic March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C., where almost 800,000 people gathered. In May, 100 days after the massacre, they held a die-in at a Publix grocery store to protest its donations to gubernatorial candidate Adam Putnam, a self-proclaimed proud NRA sellout. And in June, they launched a national Road to Change bus tour where they registered young people to vote and to support gun control legislation. Their tour ended on Sunday in Newtown, Connecticut, the site of the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting massacre. They met with some of the Sandy Hook parents. Among the students killed at Stoneman Douglas High School was Joaquin Oliver. He was born in Venezuela. On August 4th, on what would have been Joaquin's 18th birthday, his parents helped organize a protest in Fairfax, Virginia, in front of the NRA headquarters. This is Joaquin's father, Manny.
We are in Fairfax, Virginia, and just in front of the NRA headquarters. Today is August 4th, and Joaquin will be turning 18, by meaning that he will be having a lot of fun and probably celebrating that he was ready to go ahead and vote. Happy birthday, dear.
That powerful protest took place outside NRA headquarters on August 4th, Joaquin's birthday. On Tuesday, I spoke to Joaquin's parents, Manuel and Patricia Oliver, who have started a new nonprofit called ChangeTheRef.org. To promote the use of urban art and nonviolent creative confrontation to expose the disastrous effects of gun violence. I began by asking Manny about the protest in front of the NRA.
That day was pretty special. I got a call from our now good friend David Hogg. We fight together in this battle. And then he...
one of the outspoken students now fighting for gun control.
Yes, he's one of the leaders of March for Our Lives. So David told me that they were planning a rally in front of the NRA in Fairfax, Virginia. And he was wondering if I was okay to go there with Patricia and Andrea and kind of celebrate Joaquin's birthday right in front of their faces. And I was totally okay with that idea. I think it was a brilliant way to have Joaquin making a statement in front of these group headquarters. So we did that. We went to Washington, then we went to Virginia. We did our wall number 9, and a lot of people was singing happy birthday to Joaquin. So it was
in front of NRA headquarters.
Right in front of the NRA headquarters. And it's interesting that being this like the headquarters, like the center of this whole gun lobby, if you want to say it that way, there was only like 30 people from their side protesting what we were doing. At the same time, there was like 1,500 on our side. So that gives you the balance that we see every single day, every time we go to different places, of how the numbers are divided in this nation right now. There's way more people in our side. That's for sure. And
it's not the first time you were in front of NRA headquarters. You went to confront the NRA in Dallas at their national convention when President Trump and Vice President Pence went to speak.
That was interesting because we had the NRA convention was in Dallas. So we were there a week before the convention to plan where we were doing our wall, which is a an action of demanding rights, basically against gun laws. So when we were there a week before, Trump still didn't know if he was going to show to the convention. And for me, it was totally, I mean, why is he going to come here? Why is he supporting these people? And then when I heard the news that he will be there with Penn and they will be together empowering this group, that's when I added him to the wall. So the wall changed its graphic just because of his decision of being there. And I thought that, okay, now that you're going to be here, I'm going to use your image also on my rally, which is 2 blocks away from where you're going to be.
So explain your tradition now of making murals. You're an artist, Manny.
I am, yes. I love art. That's what I do. Okay, I don't know how to fight in any other way. I speak and draw. And there's a creative process behind these walls. It wasn't planned to be happening, of course. Our future should be way different than what we're living right now. But we come to these places. We congregate people that follows our movement, and then we start drawing on not permanent walls images of Joaquin. This is a way to give Joaquin a voice still these days. And I do graffiti art style, so a lot of stencils. I research deep where we're going and what's happening in that location. And according to that, I will play around with some elements and make sure that Joaquin's words are pretty loud and clear. We decided, me and Patricia, that Joaquin, besides being a victim, that he is sadly but true, he will be an activist. And this is a way to do that. This is a way to bring the legend of Joaquin right here, right now, very loud and clear, as one of the kids that is leading this amazing movement.
So talk about the first mural and what it said.
First mural that we did said, we demand a change. And I thought about that because
this was in Florida.
This was in Wynwood, Florida, the design district. And I thought about that. It was very recent to the tragedy. And I was very sad. And there is a balance between being sad and being proactive and mad and being very activist, and sometimes sadness limits your emotions. So that wall, it was a very hard experience because I had no idea where I was going. I do remember that I had a hammer on my hand, and I was between being sad and mad. I just hit the wall. It was a drywall wall, fake wall. And that sound of me hitting the wall made some of the people that were there run away from the room, because we were all expecting that a shooting could happen anywhere.
It just sounded like bullets.
It sounded like a bullet, which is amazing. I discovered that same moment a way to impact people, which is, in other words, convincing fast, and I like that. The option of impacting people instead of convincing people. So then I hit the wall 17 times. And then I had sunflowers, and I placed those sunflowers in those holes, like somehow honoring the victims from Parkland. So that became like the process of each wall. And the walls have been evolving. Now there are more. Now it's a combination. Now I'm not that sad. I'm more mad than sad. I became a little more a better researcher of what's going on. I've been educating myself. How do I fight this?
Manny Oliver, the father of Joaquin Oliver, one of 17 people, 14 high school students killed 6 months ago in the Valentine's Day massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. When we come back, Manny and his wife Patricia will talk about Valentine's Day and the day they became U.S. citizens along with Joaquin. It was Inauguration Day, 2017. For our music break, we turn to a video put together by a family friend. It features Joaquin lip-syncing to some of his favorite songs.
Stankin', what the f*** no stankin'? I won't die.
That video put together by a family friend. It features Joaquin Oliver lip-syncing to some of his favorite songs. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, return to class today after summer break, we're looking back at the Valentine's Day shooting massacre 6 months ago, when a former student gunned down 17 students, staff, and teachers in the first in just 3 minutes. We are speaking to Manny and Patricia Oliver, the parents of 17-year-old Joaquin Oliver, who died in the shooting. I spoke to them Tuesday. Manny talked about Joaquin's final hours alive.
The night before the tragedy, and this is a very nostalgic story. It hurts, but I'll share it again. Joaquin asked me to stop by and buy some flowers. For his girlfriend, because it was going to be Valentine's Day. So we bought it. And then the day after, when I dropped Joaquin in school at 8:30 a.m., he said, "I love you, Dad. I love you, son." And he was holding the sunflowers. And he was supposed to call me back to let me know how it go. I mean, we had that kind of relationship. So I told him, "Dude, you make sure you call me back to see, so you can share Tori's reaction with the flowers that we bought last night." And he never called back. That was the last time that I had a chance to speak to my son. But I do know that Tori got the sunflowers, so he had time to give them to Tori.
Patricia, you're actually wearing those sunflowers, is that right? You wear the sunflowers around your neck?
Yes, that's true. Tori made us a little necklace that together you can see a heart. So she made it half and half for each of us with one of the little flowers that she received that day. That was very nice of her, very nice.
And you have one of them right there.
Yeah, it's right here.
And so she's sort of encased it in glass or
Yes,
plastic.
in an epoxy.
One of those flowers.
Yeah. So these are the flowers that I bought with Joaquin the night before. So the question here is, or one of the multiple questions that I've been asking to myself is, we did the right thing. We were raising our kid in a house full of love that will buy flowers for Valentine's Day. Him and his dad were buying flowers the night before. What was going on in that other house? What was the whole point of putting all those weapons together and those bullets together? What's wrong in this society that is an option? That while me and my son are buying flowers, some other people, that could be your neighbor, could be your family member, is just planning this terrible thing just to finish people's life.
You won't even say the shooter's name?
No. No. I don't need to.
No.
And you know why?
We don't need that.
Because there's many of them. So we cannot, this is not only an issue that happened in Parkland to Patricia and Manuel and Joaquin. Right now, while we're talking, there's another shooter planning to do this. Actually, maybe right now, someone just died because of this. So giving a name to a shooter is not necessary. It's not fair to give numbers to victims and give names to shooters. So that's the reason why we don't, it's not that it's hurting me at all. I mean, it's just not the way to handle this situation.
So what is the answer?
To solve the problem? Well, thank God we have a democracy that I trust, and there's a system, and we can vote for the people that will be able to fix this, hopefully. Besides educating ourselves in how we do what we do, we also have been educating ourselves in who we should trust and who is capable of fixing this. And I can tell you something. I've been searching for this dream team that could solve the problem. And the answer number one, or rule number one, is that if any of these guys that is planning to be representing us is receiving money from the NRA, you're out. You're not cool. You can't represent me because you don't have an impartial way of thinking. You are working like for a cartel. And as hard as it sounds, when you have a cartel, you put money into politicians' pockets so they leave the law alone, so you can keep on with your business, make more money, and kill more people.
In fact, right after the massacre, what made Parkland so different is how active you all became so quickly. When others, and particularly those involved with the NRA, like Donald Trump, are talking about thoughts and prayers, even the governor, Rick Scott, you all were mobilizing, the kids, led by the kids, and saying nothing doing. I remember at the March for Our Lives, one of the posters was tots and pears, and it was pictures of tater tots and pears. It said, like, no, that's not where we're headed.
Right.
They went to Tallahassee. You all went. You were involved with the legislation, writing the legislation. Is that right?
We were involved as much as we agreed with being part of it. We have something in common. 17 families were going through pain. We lost our kids. Some people lost their parents. These are not only kids. This is 14 students, 2 teachers, and 1 coach. So we agree in some of the solutions. We don't agree in others, but we respect each other a lot. So I haven't been to Tallahassee. Patricia hasn't been to Tallahassee. We're not those type of, that is not the way we're handling our fight. We respect what they do. I haven't been to Washington. The only day that we went to Washington was to draw a wall, to be an active graphic message sender.
Now, you all, both of you, became citizens years ago from Venezuela, right? You moved to Florida. Talk about Joaquin becoming officially a citizen, your son. When was that?
That was last year, January 20th, 2017. He was very, very excited to become an official citizen because we came here the day after he turned 3 years old. So in his heart, he was more American than Venezuelans because he just learned how to grow up in the American culture, even though we have at home our own culture. So he had the mixed combination of both cultures in general, which was very good for him. He was very proud of that. That day, he was so excited, he was so emotional, so he made like a review from when we went through during all these years, the process that we were growing as a professionals. And
let's make a point of what this day was, what you're talking about. January 20th, 2017, the day that Joaquin became an American citizen, was also Inauguration Day for President Trump.
Yeah, that was an special, unique day because we became citizens very early in the morning. That happened at 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30, and at 11.
Where were you?
We were at the place that there is an immigration center. That they have their huge room there where they were celebrating the citizenship. We were quite maybe 200 people receiving the citizenship, and they play a video with the current president at that moment, or at that time exactly, was Obama.
Because that was the morning.
Yeah, it was 8:30 in the morning, at 8:30. So he was still Obama in power, and he gave us the welcome to America. So that was very exciting.
And 3 hours later.
And 3 hours later, we had a new president.
And the three of you became citizens that day?
Yeah, we became citizens because Joaquin is a minor. Joaquin was 16 at that time, so we were automatically, the three of us, we were citizens.
Talk about graduation day, Patricia.
Well, graduation day was a very hard day because, every kid, especially Joaquin, in my case, was just dreaming about that day. So he was like, any other family. We were planning about future, about schools, about where to go, how we're going, what do you like most. And, that just, it didn't happen. So he was very committed to be going to that date. And he loves to write a lot. So he made these notes once, where he's saying, once I get my diploma, I will see straight to my mom's eyes and saying, I made it. So we were at home, we were debating, about graduation day. So we decided our daughter, Manuel and me, we decided that the person that it was the best one to be receiving the diploma was me. So I gotta prepare myself emotionally. It took a while. It took something to be there. And I said, well, I have to do what I have to do. I have to make Joaquin happy because I know that he will be very proud of me being up there on stage receiving the diploma. But we also decided to not only receiving a diploma, we have to make a statement. We have to take advantage of the moment to make people understand that this can be happening again and again and again. So that's why I
talk about what you wore.
We decided to make this jersey because Joaquin was very into sports, and we decided to make a jersey to make the statement very clear, and that was a goalie shirt, a goalie jersey shirt, but it was saying, "This should be my son."
So there's the T-shirt of you. You're holding up his diploma.
Yes.
And
they frame it.
Your yellow T-shirt says, "This should be
my son."
My son. 2 weeks after the massacre at Parkland, President Trump urged Republican and Democratic lawmakers to pass comprehensive gun control measures and accused Pennsylvania Republican Senator Pat Toomey of being afraid of the NRA.
Think of it. You can buy a handgun. You can't buy one. You have to wait till you're 21. But you can buy the kind of weapon used in the school shooting at 18. I think it's something you have to think about.
Yeah, we just signed it.
So I'll tell you what, I'm going to give it a lot of consideration, and I'm the one bringing it up, and a lot of people don't even want to bring it up because they're afraid to bring it up. But you can't buy a handgun at 18, 19, or 20. You have to wait till you're 21. But you can buy the gun, the weapon used in this horrible shooting at 18. You are going to decide. The people in this room pretty much are going to decide. But I would give very serious thought to it. I can say that the NRA is opposed to it. And I'm a fan of the NRA. I mean, there's no bigger fan. I'm a big fan of the NRA. They want to do right. These are great people. These are great patriots. They love our country. But that doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. It doesn't make sense that I have to wait till I'm 21 to get a handgun, but I can get this weapon at 18. I don't know. So I was just curious as to what you did in your bill. You don't address it?
We didn't address it as president. Look, I think
why? Because you're afraid of the NRA, right?
No, an issue. Go to the NRA 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's a big issue right now. A lot of people are talking about it. But a lot of people are afraid of that issue, raising the age for that weapon to 21.
So that is President Trump saying, don't be afraid of the NRA. Yeah. Did he do any of this that he's talking about?
I love it how he points at people, like blaming everybody. And I love also the way he says, I'm going to have to think about this. Like, dude, there's nothing to think about this. This is happening already. After that, he was at the NRA convention empowering this group. He has never been in Parkland. By the way, I don't need him to go to Parkland. I don't think he's going to.
You know, I mean, he never came to Parkland, Florida.
Never came to Parkland. I invited him publicly to Parkland. I said, now that you haven't invited me to the White House, let's do this in another way. How about you, in one of those trips to Mar-a-Lago, driving 30 minutes or 25 minutes to Parkland, and I want you to spend 5 minutes in Joaquin's room, in Joaquin's empty room. So maybe you have an idea of what's going on in many houses and many families around the nation. Of course, that was ignored. That's fine. But,
you put that invitation out because Mar-a-Lago is pretty much just down the road.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, by the way, that invitation was in all media. He got that. He ignored it. So, but he knows I'm not a pro, and Joaquin wasn't a pro-Trump person at all. And I have writings from Joaquin that.
Can you share any of Joaquin's writings?
Sure, I have. Actually, I have something right here that I could read you. That is pretty impactful. So, okay, guys, I've had it. I want to ask every one of my true friends who support Donald Trump if they could live without me. If I vanished today, would you be happy? Would you be okay with that? Not even just me, but anyone being discriminated by your president. Would you guys be 100% okay with your immigrant friends never existing in your life? And those who choose to stay out of it are just as bad. If you stay quiet, you're supporting him. So fight for us, and we'll fight for you. Love us, and we'll love you. Take us in with open arms, and we'll make sure we make the best out of our stay here.
And that's the words of your son, Joaquin Oliver.
This is my son, Joaquin Oliver. So whoever thinks that me and Patricia are leading our own fight, they should know that we're leading Joaquin's fight.
So that was a tweet of Joaquin's in the midst of the whole debate on immigration and Trump's attacks on immigrants.
Yes. The other one that I have shows, which is before that, also written by Joaquin. This is dated 12 December 2013. Dear U.S. gun owner, I am writing this letter to talk to you about how we're going to solve this gun law movement. Most of you have a problem with the idea of a universal background check. Why are you mad that there's a background check? It's for your own good. Maybe you're fond of having crazy people with death machines. You shouldn't have anything against background checks if you're innocent. Thank you. Joaquin, Coral Springs. He was 13 years.
And finally, Patricia, your thoughts as you head back to Florida, what this period, this 6 months, if you feel that you are beginning to heal, if that's possible.
Well, it feels that it happens just yesterday. So I think that's I've been meeting some other people in these same circumstances, and I think every day is a different day, and I see from them that, you know, they're just reviving the moment like it was a minute ago. So I think we have to go. We have to keep going when we are doing that. It brings you or bring us some relief that we feel that we're doing something for other kids and from other people, because we are all suffering of this terrible situation that is the lack of gun control. So that's what I think about talking about me, that it makes me feel better in a way that I can do something for somebody else.
And Manny, this 6 months for you. Also, your daughter, because Joaquin has an older sister, Andrea.
Yeah, the 6 months for me is just the amount of time that I've been fighting, and it's not enough. There's two ways of looking at time in these situations. Oh my God, it's already 6 months. It's a short time to get used to this situation, but it's also been very short for our fight. Since a week after what happened, I've been, and we go back to what we carry, and I carry this little stone that I found in Joaquin's memorial across the school, and it goes, "We will change the world for you." And that's what I try to do every single day.
Manny and Patricia Oliver, remembering their son, Joaquin Oliver, one of 17 people killed 6 months ago in the Valentine's Day massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Students at MSD returned to the school today after summer break. Joaquin would have been 18 on August 4th. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. When we return, 559 children remain separated from their parents, separated by the U.S. government. What'll happen to them? Where are their parents? Stay with us. Students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School performing in June during the Tony Awards, singing Seasons of Love from the hit Broadway musical Rent. This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. Nearly 3 weeks after the court-imposed deadline for reuniting families forcibly separated at the U.S.-Mexico border, the Trump administration's admitted that 559 children remain in government custody without their parents. More than 360 of these kids are separated from parents who have been deported by the U.S. government. The government said last week it's still searching for 26 parents they separated from their children. The Trump administration's argued the ACLU, not the government, should use its network of advocacy groups and information from the government to locate the parents that the government removed to foreign countries. Lee Gallant, deputy director of the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project, said in response, the government appears to be taking the remarkable position that it's the job of private entities to find these parents, and it can largely sit back and wait for us to tell them when we find people, Gallant said. Most of the families separated at the border were seeking asylum from violence in their home countries of El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Instead, the parents were charged in federal court with a crime for illegally crossing the border, then held in jail and detention. The children, some still breastfeeding, were sent to shelters around the country. The separation of families has sparked massive condemnation and protest, including an Instagram campaign called Dear Ivanka, in which celebrities, including Amy Schumer and Chelsea Handler, are calling on the president's daughter, who is the senior White House advisor, to take action on the ongoing crisis of family separation. Judge Dana Sabra, who issued the executive order demanding the Trump administration reunite all separated families, said for every parent who is not located, there will be a permanent orphan child, and that is 100% the responsibility of the administration, the judge wrote. Well, for more, we're joined by John Carlos Frey, award-winning investigative reporter with the Marshall Project, special correspondent with the PBS NewsHour. He's recently back from reporting trips in Guatemala and Nogales, Mexico, where he spoke with asylum seekers waiting for days, even weeks, to enter the United States still. Welcome to Democracy Now!, John. Tell us what you found.
Thank you. Well, I found asylum seekers who are waiting in line to make a claim of asylum. These are individuals who have fled their home countries because of violence, domestic violence, gang violence. They have every right to make a claim of asylum, and the Trump administration has decided to put a kibosh on it. People are having to wait in extended lines up to 2 weeks at the U.S.-Mexico border just to make a claim of asylum. This is further endangering their lives. They're in a foreign country. They usually don't have any money. They don't have a home. They don't have a place to sleep. Many of these individuals are there with their children, and having to wait 2 weeks in some sort of a fictitious line just to make a claim of asylum is caused by the Trump administration's restrictions on asylum seekers. So I'm working on a story right now to try and figure out why the Trump administration is slowing down the process. In addition, they're also restricting the claims of asylum, what individuals can actually claim as a reason for an asylum claim. And those restrictions, I think, are targeted directly at Central America. Jeff Sessions has said they are no longer going to be honoring claims of domestic violence and no longer honoring claims of gang violence as reasons to make a claim of asylum. This is exactly why Central Americans are coming. Gang violence is out of control in Central America, and domestic violence in Honduras and Guatemala is the worst in the world. Honduras is the capital for femicide in the world, and I think Guatemala ranks third for women who are abused by their husbands and killed. So these individuals are leaving with legitimate reasons to make claims of asylum, and the Trump administration is basically saying, you're not welcome anymore.
So, John, talk about these 559 children. I mean, first we thought it was 2,500 children that the government had snatched from their parents. In many of these cases, the parents didn't even get a receipt for their children, like when you go on an airplane and you get a receipt for the baggage that you willingly give over. They didn't even realize their children were being taken from them. Some told they were being given a bath. We thought there were 2,500. Then the government changed it one day and said, OK, you can say 3,000, or they said nearly 3,000. And now they say 559 kids haven't been reunited with their parents. Where are the kids? Where are the parents?
Well, if we all knew where the kids were and where the parents were, they would be reunited. This is a debacle. This is poor management at the very least. This is an inhumane practice of not being able to match children with their parents. In many cases, records were not kept or taken. Something simple like a cheek swab for a DNA sample so that there could be an accurate match. Excuse me, especially if you're trying to match children who may be too young to talk, who may be too young to identify their family members. That is a possibility as well. There is evidence to prove that in 26 cases with parents that the government didn't take any information at all. They just took the kids from 26 parents without taking names, without taking any form of identification or any way of even matching them. There's also evidence to show that at least 5 children remain nameless without any sort of identification on them. So these children, we don't even know who they are, whose parents they are. They'll never be reunited. I've also heard in some cases that the parents who've been deported have given up. They're not going to look for their children anymore because it's futile, and they think that maybe the kids might have a better life in the United States anyway. So this is a disaster built exactly from the hands of the Trump administration. I've also heard, while I've been at the border in Nogales, that children are still being separated. I don't think that that's being reported enough, that this is still a process. The odd thing about it is that asylum seekers, when they come from Central America especially, they believe, and I'm not quite sure why this is a belief, but they believe that if they bring their children, they have a better chance of actually getting asylum. It's some form of proof, they believe, that if they have their children in tow, that maybe they'll get into the country easier. So people are still continuing to bring their children, even though they've been separated.
Wait.
Mostly because they don't have a choice.
Just, if you can repeat what you just said. Children are still being separated from their parents. The Trump administration said this is not true. And there have been, federal judges who have ruled this cannot happen.
I visited a shelter in Guatemala where migrants had been deported. And this was less than a week ago that I was there. And there was a family there that had their children separated from them about 3 weeks ago, which would have been past the deadline actually to reunite the children, not even saying that they weren't going to be separating children anymore. Legally, and this is tenuous at best, but legally, the Trump administration is allowed to remove children from their parents if we can prove that the parents have committed some form of a crime. If the parents are going to be incarcerated, then by law, the administration, the federal government, has the right to remove the children. So we're not quite sure what these individuals are being charged with. That information has not been forthcoming. The ACLU has, through a FOIA request, has asked for the charges against these parents. What are the criminal charges? Why are these kids being separated? But they're still charging parents with some form of a crime. We're not sure if it's the crime of illegal entry into the United States or some other crime that might be in their background. But kids are still being separated, at least by individuals that I've spoken to.
And do you know where they're being put?
Nobody knows where they're being put. I mean, children who are being separated from their parents, if they're teenagers, usually go to places that we handle unaccompanied minors. These facilities are equipped to handle teenagers. These are kids that usually come to the United States border by themselves, so the facilities can handle that. But infants and toddlers, kids that may still need some sort of formula or had been breastfeeding or maybe are too young to talk, where do we put them? We can't put them in a facility with teenagers. We have to put them in some sort of maybe a neonatal or a child care facility. The United States government isn't equipped to do that. These are all makeshift shelters, so we're not privy to the information of where they're actually being held.
John Carlos Frey, can you talk about the Barry Goldwater bombing range?
Sure. The Barry Goldwater bombing range is a 70-mile stretch of land owned by the federal government where the military, mostly the Air Force, performs military exercises and bombing runs, basically training pilots for military exercises. It is a cordoned-off area of the southern Arizona desert. It happens to cross through very well-known migrant routes. Migrants who are coming through the desert on their way to the United States sometimes cross the Barry Goldwater bombing range. It's almost impossible to get to a major highway where migrants usually pick up their ride without crossing this bombing range. The bombing range is restricted from humanitarian assistance because of, for obvious reasons, it's a dangerous place. And so individuals who care for migrants on their journey by putting out water, by putting out food, or maybe even searching for lost migrants are not allowed onto this stretch of land. I had been in contact with a search and rescue team over the past 6 months, and they have discovered over a dozen bodies on a very small section of the Barry Goldwater bombing range when they had permission to search in this general area. It is believed that there are hundreds, if not more, individual human remains still there on the bombing range, but the federal government is not allowing anybody on to search for these individuals. Migrants cross there on a regular basis. That has been proven. And these individuals believe, at least the search and rescue groups believe, that there are many, many more bodies there, and the federal government is barring that process.
A mass grave of migrants on the Barry Goldwater bombing range, right over the border from Nogales in Mexico,
Absolutely.
This in the United States.
That's correct.
Hundreds of bodies?
Without a doubt. This search and rescue group called Águilas del Desierto, which means the Eagles of the Desert, was given permission to search a very small section of the south end of the bombing range where there were no exercises being performed, and they were looking for an individual who was possibly still alive. They had a missing persons report, so they were given permission over over 2 weekends to search for this individual. That individual was not found, but in the process of searching for that person who was missing, they found 13 human remains just in the course of 2 weekends in a very small section of the bombing range. That, to this group, was proof that there must be at least hundreds more, if not more than that. They were the first group ever allowed to search on the bombing range. And as I said, this is a part of a corridor that migrants cross. And if you get to the bombing range on your way to this road, you've probably already been walking for about 5 days in the desert. So you're in pretty bad shape by the time you reach the bombing range. And you'll have 30 more miles to go. So it's pretty likely that, as you say, there are hundreds of human remains still there. And the federal government doesn't believe that, at least that's what they say on paper, and are not allowing groups in.
In 2015, Jean Carlos Frey, you reported on a mass grave in Brooks County, Texas, that held the unidentified bodies of more than 300 immigrants. The bodies gathered from the desert. Your report found many of the immigrants died after crossing into the United States and waiting hours for Border Patrol to respond to their 911 calls. What is the latest on this?
The forensic team that uncovered the bodies, exhumed the human remains, and started to take DNA samples and analyze the human remains for possible reunification with family members have tried diligently to get these individuals back to loved ones, mostly in Latin America, and they've had difficulty. The process is complicated, but for the most part, law enforcement in the United States keeps the names of individuals who are deemed missing. Missing persons reports are handled by law enforcement agencies in the United States. Those law enforcement agencies, if they like or if they want to, are responsible for turning those names over to the missing persons database. For the most part, sheriffs, police departments, police agencies in the United States do not count migrants who are missing as missing persons. So these individual names are not being turned over to the database. So there's no way for someone in Latin America to search for their loved ones through a DNA sample because those names have not been entered in the database. So the organizations that have exhumed the bodies, that are concerned about migrants, have started their own database. There's one that the forensic team from Baylor University has put together called Yo Tengo Nombre, which means I have a name. And they have posted the actual identifying features of the individual who's lost, the clothing that they may have been wearing, the jewelry that they may have had on their person. Any signs of what these individuals may have looked like are on this particular website so that people looking for their loved ones in Latin America may go on there and say, my daughter or my son was wearing a pair of jeans and a blue shirt. Those photographs would be up. It's a needle in a haystack way of trying to get people reunited, but that's, at least at this point, without putting individuals' names on the database, on the missing persons database, is about the only way that people are ever going to be reunited. As you say, close to 300 people were exhumed from these mass graves, and as far as I understand, only one individual has been reunited with its family. So there is not much of a government effort. The federal government has washed its hands of these individuals and is not assisting either financially or by allowing names to be put into the database.
John, we only have 30 seconds, but I want
Sure.
to ask about the connection between these mass graves, whether we're talking about Brooks County or the Barry Goldwater bombing range, and people waiting on the border, even still, even now, day after day, trying to come in legally and then giving up and coming another way and risking their lives even further.
There's a direct correlation. Individuals who are trying to make a claim of asylum have fled their countries because they don't have a choice. They're fleeing for their lives. If we are not allowing them in to make a claim of asylum, they will go another way. And the route that's available to them are the deserts of the American Southwest. It is most likely now that individuals who cross that desert will be put in peril. They will suffer just going through, especially this time of year. We can count on the fact that many of these individuals may perish.
John Carlos Frey, this is incredible reporting. I thank you for being with us. Award-winning investigative reporter with the Marshall Project. We'll do the interview in Spanish at democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.